Yo, what is good, Can't Believers and High Performers? Welcome to another episode of the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. I am your podcast host, dietitian, and habit expert, Desi Abeda. All right, so we are actually launching this on Friday. All right, let me bring you into my life a little bit, okay? So I've been trying to release episodes on Mondays, right? That was the new thing since episode 101. I said, listen, I'm going to go ahead and be super intentional about things that I'm saying, not only in just what you all are giving me from the realm of feedback, but let me go ahead and recognize the season that I'm in, right? Business has evolved into doing something really fantastic. Huge thanks to you all. I've brought in some new partnerships. I'm doing some really cool things on the Red Bull side that I'm really, really proud of and going to continue to love to do. I have another kid, so I'm a father of two right now. So I talked about episode 101, recognizing your limitations, and also being able to give into the season that you're in. All that being said, I ended up recording a fire episode that I'm still trying to extract the audio from, but I had some tech issues. So the pod on Monday actually didn't get released. So I'm calling this a Mentorship Friday episode. Okay, I know you're like, Des, I thought there were Mentorship Mondays. I know. However, I feel like the topic that I wanted to discuss today is actually right in line with what I do with my personal clients anyway. So without further ado, with our Mentorship Friday episode, let me ask you this question. Are you trying to level up in life, but you have no idea how to do it? Because I think in a lot of ways, people get really lost in the how, and they don't actually go out and execute. So what I wanted to do today is to help you develop those systems of habits and rituals so that you can actually start to get to a point where you are measuring your success by going out and doing. Yo, what up? You've heard how every superhero has their origin story, right? Well, welcome to the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. I am your host, Desi Abeda. I'm a high performance mentor, registered dietitian, and family man. Tune in as we explore the high performance habits of high performers, their origin story, and how they went from disbelief to belief in their own hero's journey, where they got to a point and shouted, "Can't believe I made it." Enjoy the episode. Oh my God, it never fails. Anytime that I hear the intro music, I mean, you already know I'm a huge Wu-Tang fan. Actually, in one of my recent interviews, I just got asked, that's how we started the interview. He was like, "Hey, in your intro music to your podcast, is that Wu-Tang Clan?" And right away, the Step Brothers, famous quote came up, and I was like, "Yo, do we just become best friends?" All right. Anywho, Mentorship Friday. I wanted to introduce the SMART system. Okay, I know that we've heard of SMART goals. This is kind of a play on it, but it's actually a system that I like to use each and every Friday with my clients because you know the value. I mean, I've talked about it plenty of times. You know the value of what it means for you to begin to actually start to measure your progress in a way where you're measuring backwards. So each and every week, what you're actually trying to do is getting yourself to a point where you have measurable specific things that you're looking at, and you're making sure that you're looking at that progression. You're being aware of some fail-safe things that are happening. You're being aware of some errors, some error in judgment. And you're also being aware and being able to track just how imperfect you are because you're a human being. And that right there, guys, is probably the biggest thing that I think a lot of us need to understand. This whole process of systems of habits and rituals, you're not supposed to be perfect. But within that realm of getting 1% better each day, this gives us actually a pretty good formula of what you should be tracking and what progress looks like from the standpoint of developing systems of habits and rituals for your side gig, for your main business, for your health, in your relationships, in your personal development. This is really a plug and play type of thing. So let's go ahead and dive into the biggest piece that I think has been extremely revolutionary when I work with people. And I ask them hey, your only comparison here is week to week and who you were on day zero. Like, I don't care what anyone else is doing. This is about you. And this is about us developing systems of habits and rituals that help you to get to a point where you're living out that dream life. Okay. So let's dive into our SMART system. So we're going to break this up into an acronym. Okay. So let's talk ground level foundational habits. Okay. So these are things that as someone onboards into any of our programs, in the first 30 to 60 days, I'm telling them like, hey, this is what I need you to expect out of this process. Because I think that we can all raise our hand when it comes to this. When you start something new, it's new and it's exciting. And more often than not, you were ready for that opportunity. Now, I don't know if you were ready to see that opportunity through till the end. And that's where most people kind of mess up throughout, our emotional cycles of change. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, make sure that you head back to season 5. We talked about those emotional cycles of change. Off the top of my head, I don't remember which episode it is, but we'll make sure that we throw it in the show notes, just so that you can go back and be like, yo, what the hell is Des talking about? Anyway, so this is where most people in the first 30 days, this is where they get really excited about what they're doing. They don't really know the type of hard work that it's going to take, but they do know that it's new and they do know that it's exciting. And they do know in most cases that it feels really good to be on this path of chasing an identity or chasing a goal. Right. And I think in a lot of ways, they're one and the same, because if we are teaching identity-based habits and we are teaching someone how to embody the type of person who goes out and does X, Y, and Z, there is a great deal of identity embodiment work. So they're likely the same thing here. So we split this up into our acronym of our SMART. It's our SMART system. Okay. So let's dive into what S is. You already know where I'm going to go with this in most cases. S is for sleep. I saw this on EBT Official, and I've mentioned this in subsequent pods. So if this is a review for you all, just bear with me. If this is brand new, it's likely going to be life-changing in a way where it starts to help you to understand the value of what it means to sleep well. Most people come in and they're like, oh, I think I get 6 hours. I think I get 7. I think I get 8. But in the same questioning, I'm asking them like, well, do you wake up feeling revitalized? Do you wake up feeling like you're rested? And more often than not, the answer is no. Okay. And so what we want to try to do here, and this is something that I do in each and every Friday check-in as we're checking in on this system, is navigating your sleep. And one way that you can do that at the very ground level, again, hip hop here, there's levels to this shit. Okay. But from a foundational aspect, these are some things that you can start to track. So you don't even need any sort of apps. You can literally get yourself a sleep journal and start to track regularity. Friends, if you can get to a point where you can get to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time, because, side note, I feel like life in general, and this is what, again, I'm going to be 37 this year. I don't know everything, but the one thing that I freaking know up to this point is that if you find a way to be consistent about something that matters to you, you're going to get to that end result. It's the same thing here. Consistency matters, and consistency is either going to make or lack thereof, it's going to make or break what you're trying to do in your life. Okay, so we bring in consistency here. And at the lowest level, what we're trying to do is to get you to a point where you are going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time. Personally, I really, really love the SleepCycle app. It really gamifies your experience behind a really high reward habit here, a really good keystone foundational habit. Because what it does is and I'll make sure I put this in the show notes. What it does is it'll take into account the time that you go to bed, the time that you wake up, any other sort of lifestyle factors. Did you get sunlight today? Hey, did you drink alcohol today? Did you have a workout? Did you have a stressful day? It takes all of those parameters. And then in addition to that, what it's also going to do, it's going to take any sort of snoring, breathing, movement. It's going to take all of that and provide a qualitative score. Now, it's not a perfect system, but the thing that I really, really love about it is you can gamify your results. So it's going to give you a qualitative score, and it's also going to give you a qualitative score based on your regularity. And if all we're trying to do at the base level is setting up a foundation, it's something that I think is incredibly beneficial. So from the front end of our SMART system, we're navigating sleep. And I saw this from EBT Official a while back, and I forgot to mention it, but I do. But it was a saying. It was like, hey, trying to get in a cardio session after only 4 hours of sleep is like stepping over $100 bills to pick up pennies. And we look at that from the performance aspect, because if you're not setting up as sleep as the foundation, it's very likely that you're not recovering in the way that you need to. Because when we sleep, we release that growth hormone, right? We get to heal our body. Even just from a brain perspective, it's a massive reset from the standpoint of what it does to your overall hormone health. And so I think that you can substitute that with like any big goal. Again, like showing up for a side gig or your main, or just trying to create a business, you do need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. So at the front of our SMART system, we have sleep. Now let's look at M. So M is for our mental health. I like to ask my clients 2 questions each and every week. That first question is us trying to create different neural pathways surrounded around, okay, you might have all of these issues, right? You might have all of these negative thoughts, all of these negative thought patterns. Listen, we're going to give you space, but before we do that, let's go ahead and create some different neural pathways, and let's ask you the question, what are 1 or 2 areas that you're focusing on that you feel like you're progressing? Because what it does for you is it helps you to get out of your head and get into your body and say, okay, so if I'm not perfect with how I'm navigating my goals, it does feel great that I'm not skipping meals. It does feel great that I'm, let's say, again, you're starting a business, that I'm posting content, that I'm showing up in my social channels. Let's say from a relationship standpoint, I'm feeling like I'm navigating healthy conflict in a way it's not perfect. However, I'm creating systems for myself where I feel like I'm progressing there, because that right there is going to help you with creating that different neural pathway. On the other end of it, what I like to ask is, hey, how are you getting in the way? Because what this helps me to do is helps me to understand, like, okay, are there limiting beliefs on board? Are you distracted? Are you unorganized? Are you trying to get some of these really big goal items that are important to you? Are you trying to do them at the end of the day when you're super decision fatigued? Because that right there brings in the other mental health component, where it's like, well, what rituals are you engaging in right now that actually aren't serving you? Okay, so for our M, we're looking at mental health, and we're really just asking ourselves, what 1 or 2 ways are you progressing? And on the other end, what am I doing to get in the way of this big identity or a big goal that I'm chasing? Okay. And this is where you get to be honest with yourself, because when you're doing these like personal check-ins for yourself, you're going to have to be honest. You have to, because in a lot of ways, from a progress standpoint, data doesn't lie. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create data. Okay. Now let's go into our A of our SMART system. So A is for our activity. I personally really, really love to look at the non-exercise activity thermogenesis part of someone's overall life. Because I think in most cases, especially from a health perspective, especially just like trying to take care of yourself, people get lost in, well, I need to work out X amount of days and I need to get back to where I was back in high school. Like, listen, I want to get back to there at some point too, but I'm also trying to gamify it for myself, stepping in my 37th year of, you know what, let me be the best athlete I've ever been by getting stronger, faster, and being able to do it longer. That's like one of my overarching like age goals, where I'm like, you know what, let me try to create a better athlete within myself. And in a lot of ways, I try to do that with a lot of my clients. So going back to our activity, utilize your tech, right? So in most cases, let's say you have an Apple Watch, how often can you close your rings? At the very base level, if I can get someone to close their rings 3 times a week, that is a phenomenal place to start. Because then we can build on it. Then we can start having higher level conversations around, all right, how do you want to get bigger? Do you want to get stronger? Do you want to build more endurance? Do you want to take a look at that VO2 max? There's just so many higher level conversations that we can have if you start to do those very base and ground level things that are going to help you with your overall goals, or really just getting your needs met and engaging in self-care. So that's one way that we can do it. Another way that you can look at this, and we can kind of double up and habit stack in this way, is like, hey, it's phenomenal for you to at least get 15 minutes of sunlight in the morning, because that's really going to help your sleep throughout the day, and it's really going to help your mental health and a bunch of other bodily systems. What I like to do is like, hey, let's create a step goal, because most people are able to, record their steps through fitness watches or their phone. And I try to say like, hey, what would your day look like if you got to a point where you got 7,000 to 10,000 steps? Like, what does it look like? How aligned does it feel to do that? So in a lot of ways, from an activity standpoint, you can look at the very ground level and say, okay, well, what does my week look like if I'm setting myself up for success by closing my rings 3 times out of the week? Or perhaps trying to get to a point where over the week I'm averaging anywhere from 5 to 7, or even 7 to 10 if I'm someone who's much more active than normal person. But at the very base level, we need to create some sort of foundation. So if you track your steps throughout the week and you come back with 3,500, 4,000, another side note, most people who do start in a lot of my programs, they're usually starting right around there, 3,000 to 4,000. And what I like to say is like, hey, we have time here. So each and every week, let's go ahead and add 500 steps until we get to a point where you're in that identity of like, you know what, I'm someone who goes on walks frequently. I'm someone who gets 7,000 to 10,000 steps on a daily basis because I've built it into my identity and built it into my lifestyle. Okay, so at the very base level, we want to try to get that foundation. And then from there, we want to see like, okay, does it feel good to get 7,000? Does it feel good to get 10? Like where's my sweet area with where I am in my season in life, and how can I continue that? Okay, so that's the A. Now our R is going to be representative of recovery. This is where we bring in nutrition. This is where we bring in hydration. This is where we bring in other things that help you to recover from the type of work that you're doing, not only just from a strength training perspective or exercise perspective, but it's just like overall recovery in life. That's where nutrition is a huge component. And before we can even talk higher level things of like, hey, let's take a look at a calorie deficit or calorie maintenance or calorie surplus, before we can even go into those high level conversations, we need to help you create a baseline and a foundation of, okay, do you know what a balanced plate looks like? If you do know what a balanced plate looks like, okay, so for these meals, how can we get to a point throughout the day, and we build on this, by the way, how can we get to a point where we set up breakfast and we say, okay, do I have essentially the 4 components of what a balanced plate looks like? Do I have protein? Do I have quality carbohydrates? More or less is half of my plate consistent of colorful fruits or veggies. And then do I have some fat on board? Okay, that's how we want to build balancing your plate. What I like to do with most people is they come in and I'll say, hey, lowest hanging fruit, if I asked you to balance your meal, what's going to be the easiest thing for you? Is it breakfast, lunch, or dinner? In most cases, it's probably going to be breakfast because it's the way that you can start your day. Okay, so that's where we start. So on week 1, we say, okay, let's go ahead and balance your meal. Let's take 3 days out of the week. I like to spread it out for people. So people will either post their meals or create that habit and that ritual, or that system rather, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Because what I tend to find is that if you map out 7 days, more than likely you're going to get burnt the F out. It happens all the time. I see it all the time. Okay. However, if you create a lower level goal here, you have the opportunity of doing it each day because you're going to create some residual awareness throughout the days that you're not being aware. So at the very base level, when you create this foundation, you can start with, okay, I'm going to make sure that I have a balanced plate. And you can take pictures of this for yourself. You don't even need to be in something like, you don't even need to be in any sort of system but your own. But the whole point behind me teaching you this is that if you can take this and run, and this really works for you, that's the magic of podcasting, right? That's the magic of creating content in the way that I do. And at the same time, if you're someone who needs support, someone who needs accountability, this is where you got to look at the show notes and where to contact us to get the help that you need. All right. So going back to this. So this is where we create that very base level amount of goals from a nutrition standpoint and a recovery standpoint. So we look at, let's go ahead and do this for a week. Can I do breakfast? And then we move into lunch the following week. And if you're doing well, then we move into dinner. If you're someone who is getting to a point, again, this is how we track this progress, right? So if you're someone who's getting to a point where you're like, wow, week 1, I did breakfast, flawless. It's fucking great. And then week 2, you're like, wow, I completely failed with the lunch. I wonder what that's about. This is where you get the information. Are you not planning? Are you too busy? Are you skipping meals? Are you someone who is going out for like client meals? Like it's stuff like that you want to start thinking about. And you wouldn't have known that that's an area that you need to plan for hadn't you been tracking or measuring backwards in this way in our smart systems. Okay. Now, Let's go to our last one. It's our T, right? I like to think of our T and our smart system as our trophy time. Like, how are we getting this trophy, right? How are we getting this hardware? And the way that we do that is we measure your progress. I personally have a system for our clients where each and every week they're measuring backwards and checking in on our smart system. Because this can be plug and play for any sort of goal that you are trying to navigate. Because at the end of the day, if you are taking care of yourself, you're more than likely going to be able to overcome moments of self-doubt, moments of limiting beliefs, moments of like, I don't know if this is going to work. Because you're keeping your side of the street clean. You're doing everything that you need to. And the one thing that you need is support, accountability, and community to keep you going. Because the whole process behind this too is helping you to explore the purpose behind what you're doing. Like, are you being purposeful about how you spend your time and who you spend your time with? Okay, so in the realm of measuring backwards, you can take our smart system here and you can literally just take a blank journal, get yourself a pen or pencil, and just start to map it out. In our S region, how am I tracking my sleep for the week? M, mental health. What are one or two things this week that I did well? What's an area or thing that kept me from getting to a point where I was able to execute all my goals? From an A standpoint, how can I track my activity? How can I be consistent with like, okay, am I closing my rings on certain days? Am I navigating a step goal? With our R in recovery, how am I tracking my nutrition? How do I know that I'm getting myself not only recovered from the day, but also prepping me for the next day? And then in our trophy time, again, it goes back to how you're utilizing the system. Okay. So I hope this was helpful. Happy Friday, my friends. We're going to recontinue our posts on Monday. I had a hell of a week. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to take this L and I'm just going to post this on Friday. Oh boy. All right. Love y'all. Catch you on the next. Let's go.